This is what we call the epidermis. Epi means above, and dermis means skin. What is important is to realize that this is not one layer, but several strata. And we can just mention them just for the sake of you knowing that we're talking about a unit, the pilosebaceous unit, made of the epidermis, which is divided into different strata, starting from the stratum corneum and ending up with the stratum basale or germinativum. There are some other layers above, but what I want to make sure is that you understand the basic structure of the hair and not the details that are such, because we need to deal with something very important that doesn't quite involve the epidermis, but involves the hair follicle. So if I draw this, you might see that it looks like a hair, and in fact it's a line that represents a hair. Right at the bottom, embedded into what we now call the dermis, there's a structure called the hair follicle. And this is like a pouch that basically encompasses the hair. And right here at the bottom, there's the germinal papilla. And this is a structure that is right in the area we call the bulb or the hair root. And this one has a little artery and a little vein that get in touch with the microcirculation or the blood as such. So this is the artery, and in blue we got a vein. And this structure, the papillae, plays a major role because in the hair, simply because it feeds the hair from the nutrients that the blood is bringing into it. The only living part of the hair is the area that is encompassed by the follicle. We call that the hair matrix or the hair, and which part of that is the hair bulb or the hair root, as I just mentioned. Here we got important structures that allows us to be aware of the senses or the changes that the hair has responding to environmental signals such as temperature. If it is too hot, there is a structure in the hair follicle that is called the sudoriferous gland that starts secreting something we call sweat. That's water, and that's an apocrine gland, and it's found right there. We also have another type of gland that is known as the sebaceous gland. The sebaceous gland basically stores fat. So here we got a lot of triglycerides and fats. This is a very important structure because it responds to hormonal changes, believe it or not. So the hair as such is a dead structure. But within the follicle, we got living cells. We got the melanocytes that produce the melanin, the pigment that gives color to the hair. And also we have the keratin that gives structure to the hair. It's what we call a plasma-solved structure. That means it's more solid than liquid. And therefore, it has a capacity to raise when the stimuli hits a muscle. And I say hits because that's exactly what it does. It gets to a muscle called the erector pili muscle. And the erector pili muscle is the smallest muscle in the body. And that connects the hair follicle with the sensory system. We call the neuromuscular junction. This tiny muscle is the smallest muscle in the entire body, and yet is the one that works 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, almost every second, because it's constantly sensing and it's contracting and expanding. Every time this erector pili muscle contracts, the hair rises, and it rises to different stimuli, such as the temperature. If we get frightened or scared, also that response is captured by our hair, our pilosebaceous unit, and the hair rises in response to a hormone. that is allowing us to respond to fear, and that is cortisol, and that is also adrenaline, which is a neurotransmitter. The interesting thing about this is that all this happens in this little gland here, the sebaceous gland. That's, as I said, this one stores fats. And we got certain hormones called steroidal hormones, such as testosterone, progesterone, estrogen, that actually play a major role in the physiology, that means in the way the pilosebaceous unit functions. And this is stored right here. And because it's a source of nutrients, because fats are nutrients, there's a bacterium called Propionibacterium acnes that basically feeds from that sebum and feeds from those steroids that we've got in there. And therefore, many people, especially teenagers, develop a condition that we call acne. And then the pores on the skin are right here, and the glands, the sweat glands, could be apocrine if they got their own exit to the pore, or they are called ecrine if they are connected to the duct that connects the sudoriferous gland to the follicle. So when we have these glands working, the body is responding as a whole, because this is happening in every single cell that is part of the hair shaft, part of this pilosebaceous unit. And these cells are of ectodermal origin, and these cells are the melanocytes, the keratinocytes, and fibroblasts, and epithelial cells. So we got a whole population here of cells that make this follicle pretty much alive, but the rest, this structure that we call the hair shaft, is completely dead. This is why the hair is able to store information, because among the information that it also stores heavy metals, poisoning of the body, poisons, things that cannot be circulating in the blood nor the lymph. The hair basically is able to store it without causing us any damage. And the hair grows not because it's a living system, but because of the action of the estrogen that is found within the sebaceous gland. As you can see, this is simple, but at the same time, it's complex. And you can go into Google and simply type pilosebaceous unit or the pilosebaceous follicle, and you will find the structures that I'm referring to, and you will see in more detail all that is involved in what we call the pilosebaceous unit for this proper functioning. So up to that, we know that the hair in this area is connected to the bloodstream. And the bloodstream brings nutrients to the papilla that then is taken through the artery and is put into these cells to nourish the melanocytes and the keratinocytes and the fibroblasts, so that they can maintain the hair follicle living, alive. The nutrients bring nourishment to this part of the pilosebaceous unit. Remember, the hair as such, what we call the hair above the shaft, above the cranium, above the scalp, is completely dead. But this one grows. And the longer it grows, apparently the more strength we've got. You might recall the story of Samson and Delilah. And remember what happened. He was a very strong guy. He was able to even put temples down just by using his arms like this and bringing them to his chest, and the whole columns would collapse. But he lost all his strength when Delilah basically cut the hair, and then he was beaten. He's not the only case. Many people in the world with long hair are more receptive, are more sensitive, are stronger. They have more creativity, more imagination than people who are actually not able to grow the hair, or they have very short hair, or they basically shave it to the point that they become followers and not any longer leaders. This was seen in the United States Army when they recruited a lot of Indians, because they knew that these people were strategic planners. They knew exactly where to go, what to do, and when to do it, and they were brilliant at it. They had long hair. But when they caught it, as these people enrolled in the army, these people lost that ability to be so receptive to reading the environment. So we know that the hair plays a major role in this. Another example that is obviously interesting is that found in cats and dogs. And we know that a cat and a dog sense the presence of the owner long before the owner makes himself or herself present, before the dog or the cat. They can read this information thousands of kilometers away. And they know that if you're in one continent and you're flying to another, they know that you're coming home, and they change their behavior. Also, the whiskers in many other species are sensory structures, because through that they can basically decode information from the environment in terms of vibration. So they can sense where there's an animal that is being hurt. So that is a good thing, because if they know that, they can go and basically feed from that animal, because they know that they got a very good chance of conquering a prey for their survival. It is just amazing what happens. The equivalent of the hair in nature, in the plant kingdom, are the trees. That's the stump of the trees. It's very similar. The roots of the tree are alive. And of course, the parenchyma and the mesenchyma and the hilema, which has internal conducts of the tree to allow the chlorophyll to go to the leaves, for example, is just incredible. Because the tree is a living structure, and every tree senses the presence of others, and they talk among themselves, and they are connected through the root system, believe it or not. This is quite interesting, and you should look it up on the internet. By looking at communication among trees, you will see that every little bit of the place where they are planted is mapped in their branches, and there is a distance relative to the space between them or among them that is found within the distance between the branches, and one branch and another, and one leaf and another. This is just perfect design, and it works all in harmony, and it works with energy, and it works in such a way that is efficient in basically communicating signals internally and also externally, so that we can form ecosystems where species are able to share the same environment. And this is beautiful because they contribute to the coexistence of both species. In our hair, the same thing happens. Every cell that we've got, that we are said to have 100 trillion cells. And that number has been increasing, because when I first heard about it, it was about 25 trillion cells. Then someone said, no, it's about 50 trillion. Then someone says, no, it's about 75 trillion. Now we're talking about 100 trillion. Regardless of the number, the trillions are in trillions, and it's very hard for a human being to be able to imagine trillions. And what I'm referring to here is a very complex and yet very simple way of communication, just using vibration and frequencies and resonance. That's all it's needed, so that we can look into a discipline that is very exciting and is opening many doors for people to explore. Among them, cell well-being. Because now we're looking at the world of epigenetics. And that is the way the hair, along with every single cell in the body, is able to decode information based on signaling. A way of storing information that is endemic to that species, to that particular organism, regarding its history. And then all that storage is found within the hair follicle, believe it or not. And this is just amazing. Why? Because now we got the technology to decode that information. And cell well-being through the S drive, remember the S stands for signature, and that's pretty specific for the person that we're looking at. not for everybody else. It's just like having a mobile phone that is a Samsung or an Android or a what you might call an iPhone. And these are the major branches that have monopolized the telecommunication industry. And almost every phone looks exactly the same as any other. But there's something that makes that telephone quite special and unique, and that is its frequency. That means it belongs to you because you have signed a contract. You have put your signature to get a contract for the right to use that phone through a telephone number. And that telephone number, when you dial it, only recognizes one phone number, and that is your phone number. It's made of a country code, an area code, and then a number. And that number is a number of digits. But when you dial those digits, no other phone will answer except the one that you just dialed. That is called specificity, and that is called allowing an entity to be identified. Therefore, through the hair, we can find information that is only endemic or proper of us, of nobody else. And this is very exciting because now we can use that technology that Cell Wellbeing has developed in order to read those signals and their effect on the human follicle, the hair follicle. And that's exciting. And let me tell you how that happens. It's exciting because it's opening the door to explore what hasn't been explored before, and that is the potential that we have to increase people's quality of life. We call that state of wellness, of well-being, and therefore Cell Wellbeing got its name from that, because what we're interested in the well-being of the person, so that we can realize perhaps a dream. And I say perhaps because not everybody wants to live longer, but certainly most of us would love to look younger, and this is possible. This is possible because we got two ages. One is the biological, the other one is the chronological. The chronological age, we cannot do a thing about it because that started from the second we were conceived, 9 months prior to our birth. And in those 40 weeks or 9 months, we developed from a cell called a zygote, that is a fertilized ovum by a sperm from a male. And that becomes, within 9 months, it becomes a structure that we call a baby, going through the stages of pre-embryonic development. And these stages encompasses huge, massive changes and the massive production of something we call stem cells. This is just incredible. You know why? Because this is what gives us the potential to do what we are doing. Working with the phenotype, working with cellular differentiation that is not dependent on the genome. In other words, it's independent of the genes of our DNA, because it's got to do with the decoding of information by methylations. These are full stops that the environment puts in those signals, and they affect a couple proteins found in the nucleus. From one of them makes the chromosomes and the autosomes, which in turn are made of DNA, which is made of the genes that we talk about, that condition many of the expressions that we have of different substances in our body. And this is exciting. You know why? Because it allows us to work with the signals. If we can change the signals, if we can change our perception, we can change our life in an amazing way. And many people are doing this already. Just by it's as simple as leaving certain foods out of our menu because we are sensitive to them. Up to now, there's no test in the world that tests for sensitivities. We can test for allergies, and we know that we are allergic to something because of the symptoms we get, like the itchy or red eyes, the asthma that many people get, some sort of anaphylaxis, meaning contraction of the entire system. And that's a very severe allergy. And we know that because it's coming in front of us, we can see it. When we talk about intolerances, we also know that there is an intolerance because normally there is a lot of mucus secretion. Perhaps people begin to